Time to go through the papers now with political editor of The Sun on Sunday, David Wooding, and former editor of the Daily Star, Dawn Neesom. Morning, you two.
Good morning,
nice
gorgeous.
to see you. That was very glam.
Thank you very much. I didn't get the wear a blue memo.
I'm sorry. Well, you're bringing the colour. We're grateful for it.
You look like you're in school uniform. I look like I'm sort of like the bad girl hanging around.
You are the bad girl. You
really.
are the bad girl. Let's have a look at the Telegraph, Dawn, looking at the PM.
Right, absolutely. It's an interesting day for the papers because no one really agrees on what story is the most important one. The Telegraph, as is the one, have gone with Boris Johnson, and this is Boris's trip to Sweden and Finland, where he has done a deal for a mutual military assistance deal, which means basically he suggested that our troops could be sent to Sweden and Finland, even if the two countries do not join NATO, and they're not NATO members at the moment, let's remember, to protect them from a Russian invasion. Now, this is a British initiative. It's not NATO, which is a very interesting thing. So it's Boris again. Is he proving it? I'm not sure, but being the most go-getting, forward-thinking leader in Europe at the moment, he's the one that...
Well, he is. He really is on this.
I mean, to be fair, Stephen, he is, and that's why in Ukraine, they have posters of Boris and they're flying the Union flag because we are appearing to do the most that we can for them. The thing is, in theory, this is a good thing, but it does raise interesting issues with the whole Russian thing again, doesn't it? And I keep coming back to the fact that Russia has more nuclear weapons than any other country on Earth. And if we are willing to, even though Sweden and Finland are not remember the NATO agreement means that if Russia invades a NATO country, then we all join together to fight back. Even if Sweden and Finland don't join NATO, though, we are willing to send military troops to help them out. Now, surely this is another red flag to Putin and Russia? I mean,
But haven't you? Isn't he one of these guys? We keep saying he only responds to strength, and if you don't turn around and say we are going to defend this, then he's likely to chance his hand.
Well, absolutely. And where does it end otherwise? I mean, we can't let it carry on, can we? Something has to be done. So it's a very interesting, development, and there's a wonderful picture of Boris doing what Boris does very well. Another photo opportunity in a rowing boat this time. The only surprise is he hasn't got a high-vis vest, which is his normal thing.
Oh, yes, he does like a high-vis vest.
But, I mean, obviously, Sweden has been neutral for, 200 years, I believe. And it's got one of the largest and best air forces in the world.
Yeah.
Couldn't quite get my head around that one.
Yeah.
No.
And Finland, again, everybody does military service. All the men do military service, don't they? Because, obviously, they're on the border of Russia, that's why. But
yeah.
It's an interesting development, but it does make you wonder about what happens should Russia decide to invade Finland.
Yeah. Oh, heaven forbid. Closer to home, David, let's talk about the cost of living crisis. Lee Anderson has not covered himself in glory with his perhaps patronising suggestions of how to tackle the crisis.
Yes, well, Lee Anderson is the Conservative MP for Ashfield, incidentally the constituency held by GBNews presenter Gloria De Piero for 9 years until the 2019.
And he's a former Labour councillor, isn't he?
Yes. And this is one of those sort of red wall type seats and former Labour stronghold. But he's been decrying the story which is that Conservatives have been under a lot of pressure on for some time about the growth of food banks, showing that more people are falling into poverty. And he said, well, look, a lot of the reason for this is that people don't know how to cook properly. And in Ashfield, anybody who comes to use food from a food bank will be sent on a course to learn how to cook. Now, there's some truth in that. You can save a lot of money if you know how to cook using basic ingredients. But he's saying you can cook a basic meal for 30p. Well, I'm not sure the present prices you can. I mean, something like 100 out of 700 of the basic cheapo foodstuffs in supermarkets have rocketed. And there's something like 250,000 households more have now gone into food poverty. So he's been roundly branded as insulting, out of touch, disgraceful. I think
I can't cook, right? I mean, I really wish that. I mean, I think it's so important, and we don't really do what it used to be called home economics when I was at school. I don't know what it's called these days, domestic science, whatever. But we tend not to teach these things to children as much as I think we should do, because it is a very, very, especially the way we're going, a very necessary thing in life. And I think he has got a point there. I don't know how he said it, whether it came across as arrogant or whatever. But, I mean, you know, the brilliant, amazing Jack Jack Munro, who does, encourage and tell people how to survive on a very low budget and teaches people to cook. I mean, she's amazing what she does. Now, this is a very similar message, but when it comes from the left, it's treated as a good message, as indeed it is. But when it comes from a Tory, you're talking down to people, you're patronising people, you don't know what it's like to be poor. Now, I get that might be true, but he does actually work with this food bank as well. I'm not defending what he said in any way, shape or form. I think he has a point, and I think it's very important that we do... I mean, I'm talking about myself,
It's the way he said it,
It's the way he said it, Stephen, I get.
I mean, I didn't see the coverage,
No.
but the way it's portrayed that he said it...
Well, it's like George Eustace the other morning recommending that people buy non-branded tinned foods in the supermarkets, and people saying, well, thanks for that tip, George. What do you know about buying? Well, what have you bought in Lidl or Aldi recently?
And Jack Munro has said that
I
himself.
totally agree. I think the message is right, and I think we saw it, didn't we, with some of the energy companies coming out with their top 10 tips, and everyone was outraged that people suggested they wore an extra jumper.
Yeah.
It's probably good advice.
Yes.
It's just that it's who delivers it.
Who delivers it and how
It isn't going to solve the cost of living crisis. Prices are still going up. You can put another jumper on, but your energy bill is still going to go up.
Is there a point in all of this that you can put on another jumper, or you can, live on whatever it is, casseroles and make food stretch, but people largely don't want to? Do you think that there is a pushback in the way that we didn't post-war?
Well,
post-war, people really did make do and mend.
Exactly.
And we're a bit spoilt now.
We have forgotten
the suggestion's almost offensive.
And how much do we depend on... I'm as guilty as charged on this.
Yeah, me too.
How much do we depend on takeaways?
Oh.
And they're so expensive.
Don't look at me like that, Stephen. I'm
sorry, I do. No, I think people
Healthy.
probably do. See, I never get a takeaway. Never. It's just not on the agenda.
So you can cook properly?
Yeah.
See, I'm really impressed by that. I really wish I could. And I hate myself for being that lazy, but I...
Dawn, you're not lazy. You work incredibly hard. And a lot of people like you work all the hours. I'm not letting that happen. No, you work all the hours, and quite frankly, after a long day, the last thing you want to do is start, making some stock from a chicken carcass or whatever it might be.
A lot of people are like that, so it's a...
Are you showing some cooking knowledge?
To be fair, I was just stealing that example. I've never made stock, but we were talking about it in the newsroom this morning, and that is one of the sort of things that
you a cook, David?
Pertaining to people.
No, I married a very good cook, so I'm spoiled, and I appreciate the good cooking, and my wife likes it when I like her cooking, so we're all happy.
And you've been married 40 years this year, so
yes.
I mean, you must like it a lot.
Yeah. No, it's just, I think he makes a valid point, but just not in a very good way.
It's the way he's said it.
Saying you can do it for 30p is actually, I don't think that's feasible. I don't know how you manage that. Dawn, sticking with money, actually, this is the financial... the Mail, front page of the Mail, Dawn.
Yeah.
Windfall tax. We've been told no.
No.
But now, yes.
Yes. Well, I mean, there we go again.
It's like the Vicar of Dibley.
It is, exactly that. It could possibly be another one of those infamous U-turns. Now, Boris Johnson literally days ago was saying, no windfall tax, it will stop our energy giants investing in the country, etc., etc. However, Rishi has said that it's not off the table. Now, this is one of Labour's flagship policies, I believe I'm right in saying, David, that, the cost of living is so much... energy bills are going through the roof, that... and the energy companies are making so much money. I mean, last week, BP announced record profits of $4.9 billion for the first 3 months of this year. And Shell unveiled a record gain of $7.3 billion. Meanwhile, as we've just discussed, we're all putting on extra jumpers because we're terrified to turn the heating on, and come the autumn, it's going to get worse. So for the first time ever, though, the Tories and Rishi have said that actually a windfall tax will raise money and it is not off the table, and suggested that it could raise another £2 billion and proceeds used to ease the pain of the expected rise in energy bills in October.
What do you think?
Surely it makes sense.
Would that go down well with the Tory backbenches, David?
Well, Boris Johnson is looking for ways to try and ease the cost of living crisis, and Rachel Reeves, the Shadow Chancellor, came up, as Dawn rightly says, with that idea some months ago. There's a feeling in Number 10 that the Chancellor's gone a little bit native and he's listening too much to the groupthink inside the Treasury, but he's now asked the Treasury to look at this, so clearly he's having to think about it. But will it go down well? It's a difficult one. The Tories will be divided on that, but some people believe that what you should be doing is cutting taxes rather than doing that.
As a Scouser, I'm just wondering whether you think that the Treasurer will be saying, calm down. Sorry.
Well, Michael Gove said that yesterday. Yes.
What was that all about?
I mean, he
was it offensive to Scousers?
Well, you know, it's an old joke. We've all got broad shoulders, but it was a business... Well, I have. Yeah, he was also doing an American accent as well. Yeah. So I don't know
Big news.
What he had for breakfast.
It was all just very odd.
Surreal, wasn't it? I know. It's... But maybe, I mean, listening to the backbenchers, maybe they're starting to listen to the voters. That would be a novel thing. After the election last week, maybe they're thinking, actually, people are going to be really suffering, and we maybe...
They've got to do something. I mean, it's just you just can't leave it.
Well, get rid of the VAT, scrap the green levies on the energy bills, all of those things, just for a year.
Just for a year. I know it'd make a huge difference. Financial Times, David, look at the Northern Ireland Protocol. Brussels is throwing its toys out the pram.
Yes.
No.
What a surprise.
This one's been simmering along for a while. I mean, the background, of course, is that part of the Brexit deal was that we keep an open border with Northern Ireland because we don't want to compromise the peace process. So there has to be some checks on EU goods coming into the United Kingdom. The problem is, in order to do that, they put an artificial border down the Irish Sea. As a result, the Northern Irish people are finding that there's lumpiness in the transfer of goods and trade, and it's causing all sorts of problems over there. We've now had an election which, in Northern Ireland, the local elections last week, in which Sinn Féin now get to run the power-sharing government, but the unionists are saying, unless you sort this one out, we're not going into power-sharing. So it's brought this into sharp focus that something needs to be done. Liz Truss, the Foreign Secretary, is threatening to tear up the Article 16, which means,
well, hasn't Suella Braverman, the
Attorney
General,
hasn't she just come out with a ruling that says us acting unilaterally on this protocol, in other words, getting rid of it, would be legal?
Yes, and the EU indeed threatened to do it when they were unhappy about the vaccines. The fact that we'd beaten them to some vaccines, they threatened to tear up Article 16 themselves, invoke Article 16 themselves.
In fairness, it's not just Brussels who are throwing their toys out the pram about this, though. Washington deeply unhappy at the suggestion as well. And the question is, how much do we want to rock the boat with America when we're talking about, possible trade war with Europe, when we're trying to get a trade deal with the States? There's a lot at stake, and it's an incredibly complicated...
Yes, it is. And what it all boils down to, really, is if you are a Remainer extremist, you would say, well, we all knew this was going to happen when we shouldn't have left the EU in the first place. It's Britain's fault. We signed up to that. If you're a Brexiteer, or your view would be, well, it's Europe trying to punish us for leaving, and they're imposing these overzealously, and they need to just be a little bit more lenient and real about
well, your views on that will be very welcome. Thank you very much.
Thoughts.
We're out of time. David, Dawn, thank you. We shall see you a little bit later on, of course.